while back, I mentioned that I was going to add a second, smaller X-Series camera body to my kit to complement my X-H1. I now have that second, everyday carry type camera, and it is the... Hold on, I think I'll wait just a bit to show you what I chose. Let's talk a bit about the buying process. There are a ton of choices out there, both old and new. I usually like to have a budget in mind and to see what's the best tool I can invest in for that budget. If my budget was $900 to $1,100, I would have bought the X-T3. If it was $600 to $700, I would have bought the X-T2. My budget was a modest $300 to $500. With that budget in mind, I started researching, and I narrowed the field of choices down to an X-T3, an X-T1, X-T10, or X-T20. The X-T10s being on the low end of the budget range, and the X-T3 and X-T20 being on high end. Then, all of a sudden, it seemed the choice was made for me. In the midst of my search, I saw this, a used X-T1 Graphite Silver Edition in great shape on the local used market. Although when I started this search, I didn't have the X-T1 in mind specifically, I'm grateful it crossed my path. Is it as small as the X-T20 or X-E3? No. Does it have the photo resolution or video capabilities of the X-T2 or X-T3? No. But here are just a few things about it I appreciate. The design. It's like a well-designed car that looks as good and timeless 40 years later as it did when it was released. The build quality. It feels like you're holding and using a well-crafted piece of machinery. The size. Not the smallest camera out there, but noticeably smaller than my X-H1. It's well balanced, and the grip is just big enough to give me something to hold. The viewfinder. For a 6-year-old camera, this electronic viewfinder experience is impressive. The mobility of the screen. This was something that made me hesitant about getting the X-E3. I liked the idea of having a screen that would allow me to shoot from the hip when looking down. The shutter speed and ISO dials. Although nearly all the X-Series cameras have a shutter speed dial, not all have an ISO dial. I like that this one does. Image quality. While it's not 24 or 26 megapixels, the look of the images that come out of this camera are beautiful and are more than enough for the projects I'm working on. That old phrase, comparison is the thief of joy, applies to your creative tools just as it does other things in life. I could look at the X-T1 and say that it has lower resolution, it doesn't have IBIS, it doesn't shoot 4K, and it doesn't have a flip-out screen. Or I can look at the X-T1 as an extremely well-built, weather-sealed, mirrorless camera and has an awesome X-Trans 2 sensor with great ISO performance that kicks out film-like images, all in a supremely well-designed package that only cost me about $300. $300 for an amazing photographic tool that works just as good today as it did in 2014. I always like to remind myself, even the most amazing camera in the world doesn't do any good just sitting on the shelf. So I'm going to take the tools I have to create images and go out and shoot, and I hope you do the same.